A very good afternoon, students. Now we will continue with the next lecture of business laws. We are discussing the Indian sales of goods at 1930. So we will continue with that lecture uh, of that. Now in the today's lecture, we will start with the rights and duties of the unpaid seller. For this, I am sharing the slide with you, and we'll start continue with that. So, what are the rights of unpaid seller? So, what is the meaning of unpaid seller? Unpaid seller is the time when a person or the seller who has made this, who has done the sale, has not received the payment, or the buyer has done default, or due to any of the other reason. So, so there are till yesterday we have continued by this. That is how the passing of transfer of property and rights, all these topics we have covered. In today's lecture, we will start with the rights of the unpaid seller. Now, who is known as the unpaid seller? Under the section 45 of Indian Sales of Goods Act, so the unpaid seller is the person who, a seller of the goods deemed to be unpaid seller when the whole of the price has not been paid or tendered. It means that when the price has not been paid to the seller by the buyer. Here, or even some portion of the price or the whole of the price is not paid. First thing, second, bills of exchange or other negotiable instrument which has been received as a conditional payment, and the condition on which it has been received has not fulfilled by the reason of dishonor of the instrument or otherwise. Now, second is first thing is where the buyer is unable to pay the whole amount or the whole price of the product to the seller. Then the seller is known as the unpaid seller under the section 45 of Indian Goods of Sale Act 1930. Second, when the bill of exchange or negotiable instrument like check, demand draft, etc. has been received for the conditional payment. Now the condition may be anything. Condition may be after receiving the goods, condition may be after 5 days, condition may be after 2 days. So whatever the condition, it has been defined under the contract of sale. So that condition and the condition on which it was received has not been fulfilled. The reason may be dishonor, or it may be stopped by the buyer. So any of the reason. So in case the seller has not got the price, either the buyer is unable to pay or the condition on which the sale has been done has not fulfilled. Second, now what can be the conditions? First, that now the term seller include any person who is in position as a seller. Now, seller means a person who has the possession of goods, and he wants to sell the goods as the goods are merchantable in the quality and the quantity. So here the seller includes a person who is in the position of seller, as for instance an agent of the seller. It may be an agent of the seller to whom the bill of lading had been endorsed, or agent who has himself paid or directly responsible for the price. So the seller can be any person, either the seller himself or the appointed agent of the seller who have collected the money on the behalf of the seller, and has, or the seller has endorsed the person as a agent who himself is paid or directly responsible for the price. Next, the seller should be called as unpaid seller even when only a small portion of price remains to be unpaid. For example, the sale of rupees 1 lakh has been done, and out of the sale of rupees 1 lakh, a 5,000 amount is still pending. So here the most of the portion of the amount or the sale has been paid, but a small portion of that particular price is remained unpaid. So even if the small portion of the price remains unpaid, the seller is known as the unpaid seller. Next, moving to the next point, it is for the non-payment of price and not for the expenses that seller is termed as an unpaid seller. Now here only the price of the goods, not the expenses. For example, a sale of rupees 1 lakh, the product rupees 1 lakh has been sold to the Mr. A. Now here the seller can only be known as the unpaid seller if any amount or the whole amount or the portion of amount from that rupees 1 lakh is pending. For example, the transportation of rupees 3,000 is pending towards the buyer. So in that case, the seller is not known as the unpaid seller, because here the expenses which are addition to the sale or the price of products are pending, whereas the price for which the commodity has been sold has been fully received by the seller. So in this case, the seller will not be known as the unpaid seller. Second, where the full price has been tendered by the buyer and the sellers refuse to accept it, seller cannot be called as unpaid seller. Now again, sometimes it happens that due to the scarcity of the goods or other things, what happened, that the payment has been all, now the buyer goes to seller with the payment, that please take the payment and deliver the good. At that point of time, if the seller refuses to accept the payment from the buyer and refuse to deliver the good, at that point of time the seller is not known as the unpaid seller, because he himself has refused to accept the payment. Here the buyer is having the right to sue the seller, because he is doing some fraud by not accepting the payment, and he may be selling the particular product at the higher price. For example, subject matter that the goods worth rupees 1 lakh, there was a deal between Mr. A and Mr. B for the goods amounting rupees 1 lakh. Now after the contract has been contract has become in force, the seller came to know that these goods can be sold for rupees 1 lakh 25,000. So what he has done, when the Mr. B comes with the payment for the delivery of goods, in that case the seller refuses to accept rupees 1 lakh, and said, then at in that case the seller cannot be claimed as the unpaid seller. Now here he has, it says willingly refused to accept the payment. Next, where goods has been sold on credit and seller cannot be known as the unpaid seller. Now here are two conditions, because sometimes the goods are sold on the credit. Goods sold on the credit means the person to whom the some credit period is allowed. For example, to your debtor you have allowed a credit period of, when you sell a goods on credit, then that person is known as your debtor. So you have allowed the debtor a 30 days that 30 days credit period. Now in that 30 days, the sellers cannot be known as the unpaid seller, because willingly and under the condition of credit sale, the sale of goods has been done on credit, and that seller cannot be known as the unpaid seller. Now there are some conditions to this clause. Now what are the conditions? If during the period, now if seller becomes insolvent, first thing, now when the goods were sold and during the period the sellers has become the seller has become insolvent. So if the seller has become insolvent, so it is assumed that the credit period will over on the date when the seller has become insolvent. So if the credit during the credit period the seller has become insolvent, then the seller is also, in that case seller will be known as the unpaid seller, as he has become insolvent on the particular date. Next, on expiry of credit period, if the price remain unpaid. Now next thing is that after the expiry of the credit period, let's assume that the debtor has received a credit period of 30 days now, and the sale has been done on credit. Now till 30 days the seller will not be known as the unpaid seller, and after 30 days the seller will become the unpaid seller, and he has all the rights that an unpaid seller is having, and can execute any of his or her right. In that case the seller becomes the unpaid seller. Now, what are the rights under the Goods of Sale Act 1930 which are given to the unpaid seller? So, there are two types of rights which are given by the law to the unpaid seller. First is against goods, and second is against the buyer personally. Now, these are the two main rights which are given to the unpaid seller. So, first right is that is your against goods. Now, if now against goods, there are two things we have to discuss. First thing is where the property of goods has been passed to the buyer. It means that the buyer has only already taken the possession of the goods. Second, when the property in goods has not passed to the buyer. Now here in second case, the goods are remain with the seller itself, but the sale has been executed. In there are two conditions. So in the both of condition, where the first thing we have to discuss where the property of goods has been passed to buyer, and second thing where the property of good has not been passed to the buyer. Now starting with the first, that in the case where the property of goods has been passed to the buyer. So if the property of goods has been already passed to the buyer, then the unpaid seller is having three type of rights. First is right to lien, second is right to stoppage in transit, and third is right of resale. So there are three types of rights which are available under the Sale of Goods Act, that is Indian Sales of Goods Act 1930, which the act gives to the unpaid seller. So first is right to lien. Now, what is the meaning of right to lien? Now, again, the right to lien is comes under the section 47, 48, and 49 of the Indian Goods of Sale Act 1930. So, under these three sections, there are some conditions and rights which are given to the unpaid seller, and which the unpaid seller can execute if the sellers become unpaid due to any of the negligence of buyer or due to any due course or the things we have studied when the seller is known as the unpaid seller. So, first right to lien means right to retain the possession of goods until the full price is received. So if the partial price has been paid, if the partial price has been paid to the seller, and the sum amount or the full amount for which the amount and for which the sale has been done has not received by the seller. So first, in that case, the seller is having to retain the possession of goods and he will not pass the possession of good to the buyer. Second, circumstances where the right of lien can be exercised. So the right of lien can be exercised under the following circumstances. First, where the goods have been sold without any stipulation of credit. Now, in this case, there is no condition of credit which has been given. For example, in case of cash sales of rupees 2 lakhs, there is no stipulation. Stipulation means a pre-decided condition. Now, here there is no pre-decided condition of the credit. So, if the contract has been done for the cash sales and there is no pre-decided condition for the credit, so in that case, if the goods are sold without stipulation of credit and the buyer is unable to pay the amount, then the seller is known as the unpaid seller and he can execute the right of lien, that is right of possession of the goods. Second, where goods has been sold on credit but the terms of credit has expired. Now, next example, the goods of rupees worth 2 lakh has been sold on the credit period of 30 days. Now, after the expiry of 30 days, now the sellers become unpaid seller as the condition on which the goods has been sold on credit has been expired. So, in this case, in this case, the terms under which the credit has been done has expired. So, the seller has become unpaid seller and he can execute the right of lien. So, he can retain the possession of goods until the full price is received. Next, where the buyer become the insolvent. Now, next is if unwilling the buyer become insolvent. In that case, also now the sell if when the buyer become insolvent, it means that the buyer will not be able to pay the amount. So if or that will be the full amount or the portion of amount whichever is left over. So in that case, again the sellers become unpaid seller and seller can execute the right of lien and refuse to transfer the property of the goods. Next is right of stoppage of goods in transaction. Now, right to stoppage of goods in transaction under section 50, 51, and 52. So it means that if the seller has already sent the good to the buyer, and the goods are in the way, so goods are in the transit. So there is a right of stoppage of goods in transit. For example, Mr. X has done the sale of rupees 1 lakh to Mr. Y. So as the seller has become unpaid seller due to any of the reason, so the Mr. X has the right to stop the goods although the goods are in transit. He can stop the wherever the goods are. He can stop that goods at particular place and will not deliver the goods until and unless the full amount is paid. So first, in the right of stoppage in transit means that the right of stopping goods while they are in transit to regain possession and to retain them till further price is paid. So here the unpaid seller. Now again continuing with the lecture, due to network connectivity issues, the lecture stops between. So we will again continue with the slide where we have left. So we are here. So we are here, that is right of stoppage in transit. So right of stoppage in transit means that when the goods has been already shipped and the seller has not received the price, that is partial or has not received the price in full directly, we can say that the full price has not been received or paid. So in that case, the seller has the possession. Seller can regain the possession by stopping the goods in transaction. So the condition under which the right of stoppage in transit can be exercised are: first, so there are following conditions under which the right of stoppage in transit can be exercised, because seller, until without any reason, cannot stop the goods in transit. So in that case, there are some conditions. First, sellers must have parted with the possession of good, that is, goods must not be in the possession of the seller. It means that parted means the seller has already sent the good to the buyer. Fine. Only then the right of stoppage of goods in transit can be executed, and the goods are not in the possession of seller. So in this case, goods are neither in the possession of seller, neither in the possession of buyer. So goods are on the way. First thing. Second, goods must be forced on transit. It means that it must be in the transit, so it must not be received at the destination, that is with the buyer. Third, buyer must have become insolvent. Third is that if the buyer has become insolvent, in that case again, the seller can stop the goods in transit and can execute its right under section 50, 51 and 52 of Indian Sales of Goods Act 1930. So these are the rights. Next, right of resale. Comes under the section 54. So right to resale means when sometime the seller has become, the buyer has become insolvent, or due to any of the reason, the sale has not been executed fully. So in this case, there is the rights which are available with the seller, that he, under section 54 of the Indian Goods of Sale Act 1930, that he can resell the goods to the third party. Although if there is a contract between A and B, A is the seller and B is the buyer, and due to any of the reason A becomes unpaid seller under the section 54, so he can sell the goods to C. But there are some conditions. Under the following circumstances only the right of resale is with the unpaid seller. So what are the circumstances? First, where goods are of perishable in nature. Now, perishable goods are the goods which can be deteriorated, or where the goods of which the quality may be deteriorated, or goods can be spoiled if they were stored for the large time. For example, vegetables, milk products, all these things are perishable in nature. So if the goods are perishable in nature and sellers knows that the maximum date still the goods can be consumable, the goods can be consumable in nature, the perishable goods which can be consumable in nature is 3 days. So after 1 day, if the unpaid seller becomes to know that he has become the unpaid, so he can resell the goods. So first thing, the goods are of perishable nature. Second, where seller expressly reserves, that is, reserves the right of resale if the buyer commits a default in making payment. Second is, it is under the contract of Indian Goods Sales of Goods Act 1930 that seller expressly, while entering the contract of sale, has conveyed the buyer that if you make any default, we will resell the product, and I am having the right to resell the product. Here the buyer commits a default in making the payments, and if the buyer has committed any default in making the that payment, then the seller has the right to resell the products. Next, where unpaid seller who has exercised the right of lien or stoppage in transaction gives a notice to the buyer about his intention to resell the buyer, and buyer does not pay or tender with the reasonable time. Now what happened that, and now the seller has become unpaid, as we know that due to any of the condition, if the seller has become unpaid, and that unpaid seller has his executive right of lien or stoppage in transit, either of the both of the right that he has executed, and he has given the notice to the buyer regarding his intention to resell, because he has already conveyed the message to the buyer that you have doing default and I am reselling the product. If the buyer responds to the queries, or he agrees to do some conditions or to compensate the unpaid seller, then this contract may be valid. But in case he has not pay any attention or not give any information, or does not respond within the reasonable time, in that case the unpaid seller has a full right to resell the goods which are he is having. Next, continuing with this, where the property of goods has not passed to the buyer. Now here, if the property of goods has been not to the buyer, so what the unpaid seller can do? He can withhold delivery. First, we are discussing about if the property has been, if it has been done. Second, now if the goods has been not, where the property of good has been passed to buyer. First, we are discussing about this. Now, next, where the property of good has been not passed to buyer. In that case, what are the rights or the things that unpaid seller can do is first, withholding delivery. He will refuse to deliver. Withholding delivery means he will convey the message to the buyer that he will not deliver the good unless and until you will pay the amount in full. So that is known as the withholding delivery. He can withhold the delivery and not transfer the goods. Second, stoppage in transit. Again, that is the next right which is available even though if the goods has not passed to buyer, even though in this case also he can stop the goods in transit if the goods are in transit, because here the property has not passed to the buyer, but it is in transit. Next is resale. So where the property has been not transferred to the buyer, the seller has a right to resale. Let's take an example that a shopkeeper sold electronic goods worth rupees 50,000 to the buyer, and the buyer is unable to pay the amount. In that case, the goods are remain with the seller. Goods are in the possession of seller, although now the buyer is unable to pay the price. Now, what are the available options with the seller? First is he will withhold the delivery. He will not deliver the product to the buyer until he has received the full payment. Next, if he has sent the goods to the buyer, but they have not arrived to the buyer, again here the property or the possession has not been passed to the buyer. Again, he can stop in transit and call back the goods. Next is resale. Now he will convey to the buyer that you have not paid the amount and I am executing my right and I am reselling your products to the another party. In that case, only the amount for which a buyer has paid can reclaim that amount after reduction of expenses by the seller, but he cannot claim for the goods. Next, against the buyer personally. Now, next is what are the right against the buyer personally. First is that is against the goods. Now, the personally. First is suit for price, and next is suit for damages. Now, if the person has defaulted the payment, in that case, there are two type of rights. That is against the buyer personally. The seller has a two type of rights. Or unpaid seller, we can broadly say that unpaid seller has a following right against the buyer for personally. First is he will suit for the price. He will file a case for the price of the goods, and second, he will suit the case for the damages which he has to bear due to the negligence of the buyer. Now, explaining one by one. First is suit for the breach of the contract. Now, as it is clear under the Indian Contract Act 1872 that if the contract has made, if the any contract has made, and if the any of the party fails to fulfill or to uh, comply with the conditions, the contract has become void, and it has become the if it has been done intentionally, then it is known as the breach of the contract by any of the party. So here, if there is a breach of contract of sale, again it is as just the same as the consequences of breach of contract. Again, under this, the first is suit for price, where under the contract of sale, the property of good has been passed to buyer. So in the case the property of goods has been already or the possession of, now continue with the lecture. Again, it has stopped due to the network problem. So there is a break in the lecture. I will continue with this. Continue with the recording. First is that is suit for price under the contract of sale. When the property of good has been passed to buyer, it means that the possession is with buyer. Now it is not with the seller, and buyer wrongfully neglects or refuses to pay. Now after taking the delivery, a buyer said that he will not pay the amount. So in that case, the pay for the goods according to the terms of the contract. Now, here buyer willfully and wrongly neglects or refuses to pay for the price of the goods according to the terms of the contract of sale. The seller may sue him for the price of goods. Now, again, in this case, the seller may file a lawsuit against the person, as the person has made a default in paying the payment. Now, in this case, the seller can sue for the prices in case the buyer willfully do not want to pay or do not pay the price after receiving the goods. Let's take an example that a person has ordered a good worth rupees 5 lakhs, and seller delivers the goods, and the condition was that after the delivery, and there was a 30 days credit period, and after the 30 days credit period, or in between that, the buyer refuses to pay the seller by making any n number of excuses regarding the quality of the product and all other things. Now the seller has become unpaid seller. Now seller can personally sue the buyer for such acts if he or she is unable to pay the payment or defaults in payment, has done the default in payment willfully. Second, where under the contract of sale the price is payable on the day certain irrespectively of delivery, and buyer wrongfully neglects or refuses to pay such price, the seller may sue him for the price although the property of goods has not passed and the goods has been not apportioned to the contract. Now second case, in first case when the unpaid seller can sue for the price of goods is that if the possession has been transferred, the property of goods has been transferred and has been passed to the buyer, and buyer by making n number of excuses refuse to pay the payment. Secondly, under the contract of sale, the price is payable on certain day irrespective of delivery. Now here, first the delivery has been done. Now here there is irrespective of delivery. It means that the delivery may be done or not done, if it depends. Second, so in that case, if the buyer willfully neglects or refuses to pay the price, the seller may sue him from the price although the property of good has not been passed and goods has not been apportioned to the contract. And here it has been already written in the contract that you will pay the payment on such date, only then the delivery will be made. So in that, the delivery has not been made, although in the contract of sale the day for the payment has been written. So in that case, if the payment has not made to the seller, for example, seller is not having such goods and a person has ordered that goods to the seller. Now seller buy that good for that particular buyer because that goods are not in regular use. Now, what happens that after the seller gets the delivery of goods, he contacts the buyer for the payment that the goods arrived and you must make a payment to take your goods. Now here, under this contract, the apportionment under this contract, the goods delivery of goods is irrespective because although the seller has bought it from some company to transfer to the buyer. Now here the buyer makes a default willfully, and now the seller has to bear that cost because he has already ordered. So in that case, the on the day when the payment is to be made, if the payment is not made, the unpaid seller can sue the buyer for the price of the goods, and the buyer has to take the delivery of particular goods. Next, damages for not acceptance. Sometimes it happens that where buyer wrongfully neglects or refuses to accept and pay for the goods, the seller may sue him from damages for non acceptance. Now, under which cases? Now, first is that is suit for the prices under the when unpaid seller can personally sue the buyer for the price. Now, for the damages under this, first is the non acceptance. For example, 10 computers has been ordered by an coaching institution, and on the day when the seller process the order and send the delivery of that 10 computers to a particular coaching center, the coaching center refused to take the delivery and refused to pay. Now in that case, the unpaid seller, now the seller has become unpaid and he can sue the buyer personally for the damages because although the possession of goods has been not passed, so he cannot claim the price but he can claim for the damages. Now what are the damages? First is damage of storing, damage of ordering that product because in general that particular product he may or may not require. Fine. Secondly, how much time now it will be required for seller to sell that 10 particular computers to the another buyer. So the time, that is the rent for the godown, it may be included. Next, the transit charges, that that charges he has paid to the seller has paid to the company for the transfer of goods, and next he has paid to the transport facilities for the delivery of the goods, and if the delivery returns, then he can sue for the damages on the non acceptance of the goods by the buyer. Secondly, damages for non-delivery, where the seller, now first is where the buyer, now next, now buyer, even the buyer is having the right to sue for the damages to the seller, now where the seller wrongfully neglects or refuses to deliver the goods. Non damages for the non-delivery. Now first all the rights are with the unpaid seller. Now if the seller makes a default in delivering the goods, in such case, if the seller wrongfully neglects or refuses to deliver the goods, sometime it may be happen that the buyer has ordered some goods, uh, of which are in nature that the particular goods, there is a short of particular goods, there is a shortage of particular goods. So to regain the higher price, what the seller has done, seller denies in delivering that goods to the buyer. In that case, the buyer may sue the seller for the damages for the not delivery, or for the delivery not on time. For example, there is under the contract of sale, it has been decided that on the 15th of the month, the delivery of particular goods will be made to the buyer, and buyer has done the further commitments according to that. Now on the date of delivery, the seller is unable to deliver the good due to any reasons. Either he may be getting the better price, or there is a loss in transit, or loss in transit, or there may be any issue for which he is unable to process the order. So in that case, if any damages that a buyer has been suffered due to the negligence of seller, due to the non-delivery of goods, he may again personally sue the seller for such damages of the non-delivery. Now next is section 64, which is another important section of this act, that is sale by auction. Now sale by auction, these rules, there are various rules and regulations, uh, which applies to sale by auction under section 64 of Indian Goods of Sales Act 1930. So what are the rules which applied in the case of sale is done by the auction? So first rule, an auction, the sale is complete only when auctioneer announces its completion by falling off the hammer. Now as we think that if the auction is done in the of the particular product, for example, let's take an example of the precious painting. If the auction is done for the precious painting, so in that case, when the auctioneer will drop a hammer and say that, just it's like, for example, the amount of rupees 20,000 has the final auction price, that the maximum bidding price that it has is 20,000 for the particular commodity. So the auctioneer, what we will do, he will say 20,001, 20,002, and then 20,003. So when the hammer falls, so it means that price is decided. So the auction will be only auction sale will be only assumed to be completed when the auctioneer will announce its completion by falling of the hammer. Next, a bidder is at a liability to withdraw his bid at any time before it is accepted by the auctioneer. So if if it is accepted by the, for example, now acceptance by the auctioneer means, for example, for the painting of 20,000, for example, let's say that auctioneer says 20,001, 20,002, and when he said 20,002, the person who is bidding withdraws his bid. So at that time, if it is withdrawn before the acceptance. So the bidder can withdraw the bid before it is accepted by the auctioneer. Next, advertisement to option is not an offer but a invitation. For example, if the advertisement is given in the newspaper that following diamond will be sold through the auction, so in that case, it is not a offer, but it is mere an invitation to the general public for the auction sale. Second, auctioneer has the right to make any condition he likes. Now, auctioneer is the person who is having the good, who is having the goods. So at that time, he can fix any conditions as he likes. For next, in that case, we can also take an example that first the auctioneer has given advertisement for the selling of the diamond. So in next case, he may fix a condition that if the bid is below this price, the particular commodity will not be sold. So in that case, the condition has been fixed by the auctioneer as he likes. Next, bidding can be withdrawn before acceptance. Now, as the bidding has not been accepted by the auctioneer, so bid can be again withdrawn before that. Next, pretended bidding by seller to raise price is voidable at the option of the buyer. Now, sometimes it has happened that a person who's done option sales send a one person or sits a one person in the person's bidding for the particular product, and that person is pretending bidding. It means that that person is increasing the price of the commodity, as although the price of that particular commodity for the bid is not as much high as it is. So what he has done, he is doing that thing at that time. So if the seller has done such practice to inflate the price of the commodity by the bidding bid of sale, so it is voidable at the option of the buyer. That if the option refused to buy that, if he proves that the pretended bidding has been done by the seller, so at that thing there is option that the buyer will not buy the particular commodity. Second, no seller or any person who has advertised can bid at an auction sale unless the right is notified. So the sale by auction cannot be done unless and until the right is notified by the Indian Goods of Sales Act 1930. So without that, the bid cannot be done or bidding cannot be done. Next, conclusion. Now we are over with this chapter, that is Sales of Goods Act, Indian Sales of Goods Act 1930. So here we have done all the things regarding rights of unpaid seller, duties of unpaid seller. So how the auction sale can be done, what are the conditions and warranties under the Indian Goods of Sales Act, and all the things related to the sales of in Goods Act. So sales of Goods Act is the most common commercial transaction. Knowing and sales of goods, it is important at all because this contract is most widely used in the business term. Second, law related to sale of goods act, it is contained in the Sale of Goods Act 1930. So all the things we have covered in this topic. Now I will also share the PPT presentation for this. Here we in this chapter, what we have studied: first, we have studied the introduction part. Second, what are the essential for the contract of sale, what are the basic essentials. Second, what is the distinction between sales and agreement to sell. Second, conditions and warranty. Next is doctrine of caveat emptor, that is uh, let the buyer beware. Next is right of unpaid seller, and next is the delivery rules and regulations regarding the delivery. So we have covered all these topics in this chapter. So this is the important chapter. Here again, there are three questions which may come. First question which is come, what difference between sale and agreement to sell. This is a common question, or regarding the contract of sale. Second, another question is, what are the condition and warranties under Sales of Goods Act 1930? That is the next important question. And what is the difference between condition and warranty? What is the meaning of express and employed condition? All these things. Next, doctrine of caveat emptor. Again, the let the buyer be aware. So, a question may come with another question, or a full-fledged question may come from this topic. Next, right of unpaid seller. This is the most important question from this chapter. What are the rights and duties of unpaid seller available under the Indian Sales of Goods Act 1930? So, if the question comes, we have to first write the what is the meaning of unpaid seller. Then what are the condition when seller is known as unpaid seller. Then what are the right of unpaid seller against goods, again buyer personally. Fine. Against goods, there are two types. First is where the property of good has been passed to the buyer. Second, where the property of good has been not passed to the buyer. So we will have to explain when the property of good has been passed to the buyer. Then there are three types: right to lien, right to subject transaction, right to resale. So we have to explain these one by one. Second, when the property of good has been not passed, then next is withholding delivery, stopping transit, resale. Again, there are three types, which again we have to explain. Next, against the buyer personally, that is suit for the price and suit for the damages. And last is this is another topic, that is auction sale. This may come as a small question. This may not be a full-fledged question, that is auction sale. Although the rights and right of the unpaid seller is an important question. So this chapter is very important. So we have covered up with this module. Thank you. If you are having any problem, you can send me a comment against this video, or you can WhatsApp me the questions that you want to ask. Thank you.